Now there are we have more coming up about Halloween coming in the future, but it's coming pretty quickly, and so there are some things that we would definitely want to talk about with our animals because it's a problematic time. I know that shelters and humane societies all over the country see a huge increase in animals that are brought to their shelters for multiple reasons. We'll talk about some of the reasons why that happens, but there are a lot of toxicities. ER clinics are way up in their caseloads. I'm sure when you were there, you
Yes.
saw quite an increase.
Well, that was my big concern and why I wanted to talk about really the effects that candy can have on your pet if they get into the Halloween candy. Because right now, people are probably already buying it and it's up in the cupboard and you steal a piece here or there. You try to get it high enough the kids can't get it, but they do. And a lot of times when you have little ones, they've got half the Butterfinger in their mouth, the other half's in their hand, and then the dog comes and gets it. Well, one of the horrible things that happens is that the chocolate can be toxic to your animal. And I
Right.
wanted to touch on that because Halloween is on a Saturday this year.
Oh, okay.
And that can be very scary because if someone starts to see these signs, which I'll have you go over, Doc, of what to be looking for in case they do ingest something that's toxic to them, you're talking about a very high bill when it comes to going to an emergency clinic as opposed to being able to get in with your regular vet. And then, so we want to talk about exactly what is the toxic level for the weight of your dog, what is it in chocolate that isn't okay, and the difference between like a white chocolate and a dark chocolate.
One's white, and one's dark.
Thank you. I was wondering. I really wasn't sure.
No.
And now I understand.
Yeah, no, great questions actually. And so chocolate, the two compounds in chocolate that can be very toxic to our animals are theobromine and caffeine. Both are stimulants. Both cause panting, restlessness, increased body temperatures. They can eventually cause serious heart disease. And the important thing is nowadays there are many places that you can go even before you call your emergency service or your local emergency service that you can actually figure out the toxic dose of the chocolate. There are actually chocolate calculators.
Yes. We
And
have one on our Facebook
we do.
page.
We do. I'm looking at it right now.
And you can go ahead. There's even one even below you have a great diagram that's very easy, but then if you can't figure that out, you can actually go to one that's there and you can click on the chocolate.
Toxicity calculator.
Yes, and you actually enter your animal and its weight and what exact kind of chocolate you gave it.
Right.
That's important. And
Right.
and then it'll tell you whether or not, hey, get to the doctor or you're probably going to be okay.
Right, because people don't realize that something like baking chocolate is actually much more toxic to our animals than sometimes even dark chocolate or milk chocolate. And so people are often, baking cakes and cupcakes and cookies
Right.
and all that, and that baking chocolate's out there. And, I don't know about your dogs. Well, I can tell you, I don't know about your dogs, but I can tell you about mine. Baxter, my older golden, is a counter surfer. So he loves to steal things, anything he can get his little mouth on, because he thinks he's starving to death, even though we've had him on weight situation for a long time.
Right.
So this is a very serious problem because even in small doses of some of these chocolates, the toxicity comes on very, very quickly. And if they have been exposed to an amount that is significant, I always recommend getting a hold of your emergency service and getting them there. Here in Southern Arizona, we recommend Southern Arizona Veterinary Emergency Referral Center, and their phone number for people that don't have it, that should have it by your phone somewhere, is 888-3177, 520-888-3177. And, it's much better to have your animal checked out than to have it check out.
Right.
Like that?
Yes. What are some
Just
of
made that up.
what are some of the symptoms or the signs that someone would see to be worried about? Because sometimes you'll find, perhaps I may have found at one point in time that one of my Christmas presents was open one year, and it was from my grandmother, and she likes to get these particular chocolates from Canada for me. And at that point, I realized the wrappers were all over, so someone had eaten them, and it wasn't
Yes.
me. So what kind of signs are you looking for in your pet?
Well, that's a good question. I think initially what we normally see is vomiting and diarrhea, very, very rapid breathing. It's a very common, they're panting. They could be foaming at the mouth, almost like what people would imagine a rabid dog looks like.
Okay.
Their heart rate will absolutely raise. And I always tell people, you should learn really how to check your dog and cat's heart rate. And the easiest place is if you put your hand in the inside of the back leg. The femoral artery is the most common place to be able to feel a pulse. And you can tell just by sitting there, and even if you use, the 10-second rule and multiply it by 6, you can get a heart rate. Average heart rates on our dogs and cats should be anywhere from about 80 to about 140. So we're talking about heart rates that get up into the 220s very, very quickly.
I don't know if I could count that fast in 10 seconds.
You would have a hard time. That's what. Yeah, exactly. And then this can proceed to seizures, convulsions, and death. And so if you see those kinds of signs, and obviously, usually there's some indication that the wrappers are around or the chocolate has been messed with, that's a time that you want to get the animal into your vehicle and to an emergency service right away.
If it's something that you've seen that has just happened,
yes,
is it okay to attempt to induce vomiting at your home yourself?
It is. It is. And I say this kind of cautiously because we never want to induce vomiting if, let's say, with this mixture, we've had anything with sharp edges, things that could obstruct, like a lot of silver foil, because if you induce vomiting and any of this stuff coming up tears or blocks the esophagus, which is the food pipe down to the stomach, that's a major, major issue. I mean, surgery is hard enough on the stomach and the intestines, but esophageal surgery is one of the toughest surgeries you can do because you have to get into the dog's chest or cat's chest, and it's really, really difficult. So, yes, to what we talk about to induce vomiting in a non-sharp object, in a non-traumatic object, is you take peroxide, hydrogen peroxide, and you dilute it half and half with water, and you dose them with an amount that would be appropriate. And the problem is there's really no set dosages on these things. In a small little dog, I would talk about probably a quarter of a cup. In a big dog, you might need a cup full of that mixture. And then you wait about 10 to 15 minutes. Generally, it's very rapid. Make sure they're outside, not on your nice rug. And many, many times that will start them to vomit and bring that back up. And I'd still have them checked out, even when that would be something I would still think about the emergency service. But generally, if you've induced vomiting that way, it's generally going to take care of the issue.
I will say that when I did work at an emergency veterinary clinic, I did see at one point in time 2 basset hounds that had gotten into a huge box of holiday dark chocolate.
Yes.
And although dark chocolate, healthy humans,
right,
not so much for the dogs. And I mean, these were these owners. These were their babies, and the dogs were there for 4 days. And 4 nights, and so they did eventually make it. But there was a point in time, it was so scary. The doctors it was heart-wrenching, and they had to place central lines, which is, going straight into the heart. And luckily, these animals made it. But we're talking, tens of thousands of dollars for that. Each dog has to basically have its own nurse and its own doctor and constantly monitored. And when you have to go through something like that, I mean, now your dog is worth more than your car.
Yep.
It's tough. It's tough. And you could ultimately prepare your area to not have to go through that.